I have a question for you. Who is the best chess player in the world? Obviously, it's Magnus Carlsen. By the end of this video, you will have learned several calculation tips that Magnus uses, which helps him win games by finding better moves. And you can use these tips in your own games. So let's begin. In this game, Magnus Carlsen was playing with the white pieces against Grandmaster Wesley So, one of the best in the world. The game started with the Italian opening, with bishop to c4, which aims to attack this pawn and prepares to castle. Black did the same, and knight f6 brings us to the first rule, which is follow opening principles and develop your pieces. The person who invented opening principles did so in order to make sure that all of our pieces are developed in order to attack the enemy. If we don't follow opening principles, we can't attack the enemy. Here, Magnus played d3, opening up his bishop and protecting the pawn. After castles, Magnus played c3. Again, he is following opening principles. He realized that he wants to control the center. But for that, if he just pushes here, first of all, this pawn is hanging. Also, the e4 pawn is really weak. He plays c3 first. His plan is to play rook e1, first defending the e4 pawn. Then he will push in the center. After black played d6, which also looks to open up the bishop, Carlsen calmly played h3 to prevent any piece from landing on this square. If he would have allowed the bishop to land here, it would have pinned the knight, which would have been really annoying. Black played h6 with the same idea. Here, Carlsen continued with his plan. Rook to e1. He is following the first rule: follow opening principles and develop all of your pieces. After a6, Black said, listen, it does not matter what you do, I'll move my bishop back and then I'll play the move b5, gaining space on the queen side, after which I'll just attack you on the queen side. But Magnus said, hold on, I won't let that happen. A4. This looks really silly, but in reality, it's the best move because it brings us to the second rule, which is expand your position and prevent opponent threats. This move prevents b5 and gains space on the queen side. In the future, white can go b4. After a5, controlling the white queen side, which also prevents b4, white played knight bd2. This is so confusing. Why did Magnus Carlsen trap his bishop here? What's his plan? Well, he was following a common plan in the Italian, which is to play knight f1 and then knight g3, and after that, he would have developed the bishop. Black here played bishop to e6, aiming to trade off the bishops. Many players here would start panicking. They would either take instantly, which is not the best choice, or they would play random moves uh, which they are not comfortable playing. But Magnus here again followed opening principles. He said, how can I activate my pieces to their maximum extent? And played bishop b5, which is also another common idea in the Italian game, which attacks this knight. And in the future, white may capture the knight in order to double black's pawns in some cases. Here, black played knight a7 and said, how dare you move a piece into my side of the board? I will attack your bishop and will try to eliminate it. But Magnus, unlike most players who would move back or start defending the knight, which is c4 is not a good move because it leaves many weaknesses. Unlike most players, he said, I will push with d4. This brings us to the third rule, which is play aggressively. If you don't play aggressively, how will you win? You have to play aggressively. What was Magnus's plan? Well, he's still following opening principles and he is also following the second rule, which is expand on expand on the board. After capture, Magnus takes the bishop. After the knight moves back to avoid being attacked, the material is equal, but Magnus plays this mysterious move, b3. When I saw this game, even I wondered, why did he just give this pawn away? Well, here black has doubled pawns, and it won't be too easy to take advantage of the extra pawn here. Uh, white would have put pressure on these doubled pawns in the future. Therefore, black just said, okay, I'll develop my pieces, rook e8. After a trade, Magnus again asked himself, how can I activate my pieces? Remember, he has still not developed all of his pieces, and he remembered that he has to do it as soon as possible. Bishop a3. This looks like an awkward square, but in reality, it's a really good move, as it applies pressure to this entire diagonal. After c5, we approach the fifth or the fourth, or it's the fourth rule, which is look for weaknesses. What does a weakness mean in chess? Well, it means a square which cannot be defended by a pawn. Let me ask you, is this a weakness? If you said this is not a weakness, you are correct because black can play g6 to control this square. Is this a weakness? I think it's not a weakness, right? Because many pieces are attacking it. No, it is a weakness because no pawn can control it. Magnus knew this and played knight to c4. There were many decent plans like queen c2 and rook ad1 to put pressure along the d file, but Magnus likes endgames. He played knight to c4 as he wanted to put a piece in the on the d5 square in the future as it's a weak square. After the trades, I looked at the board and thought, what is Magnus doing? Why has he doubled his pawns? And this is what 99.9% of players think, including me. We think that doubled pawns means it's something bad. But that's not true in every case. Because in this case, black can't actually attack these pawns. And these pawns are doing a good job in preventing the black pieces. Now, Magnus's aim is to put a piece on the d5 square to control it. Preferably this knight. This bishop can't go here because it's on the dark squares. But if this knight is here, uh, then it controls a lot of squares on black side of the board. After b6, solidifying this queenside structure, white played knight h4. Why did he play that? The reason is, with the knight on the f3 square, it's hard to defend this pawn on e4, as only this rook can defend it properly. Magnus played knight h4 to play f3 in order to defend it. Now, black played rook a d8. Many players here would see that they can trade rooks and they will instantly capture the rook. However, this is not a good move and black has the advantage here. Why does black have the advantage? Isn't the material equal here? It is, but black controls the open file and can infiltrate into white's position at any time. Therefore, Magnus chose to keep the tension. Always, in most cases, you should be maintaining the tension if there are pawn trades or trades like this. Let's see how he does it. Pawn to f3. What does it do? Well, it protects the pawn and it carves out a path for the king. After g6, preventing knight to f5, Magnus plays g3. This is a really creative move, though it may look like it doesn't make any sense. Can you find the secret idea that Magnus is about to play? If you found it, good job. The idea is knight to g2, knight to e3, and knight to d5. This is not very easy to figure out, uh, but once you know that d5 is a weak square, it just takes a few seconds to figure this out. Okay, the d5 square is weak. I have to get my knight there somehow. I need to create a path, and you figure it out. After knight h5, many players have tunnel vision. They think I just played g3, next I have to play knight g2, knight e3, and knight to d5. I'm better. But no, if you play knight g2 here, this pawn is hanging. So always consider your opponent's threats. Black played knight to c6. In this position, Magnus asked himself, how can I activate my pieces further? We see how the first rule, which is activate and develop your pieces, is applicable here. This bishop isn't doing anything, so let me put it on a better square, said Magnus. He played bishop c1, attacking the h6 pawn. Black defended, and now the bishop goes to the e3 square. Bishop e3 was played as it is the best possible square for the bishop in this position. Keep in mind that Magnus is again, he's not hurrying. He's taking it calmly, slowly. After a trade of rooks, black plays rook to d8. Now tell me, what would you play in this position? The truth is, if you capture, it's extremely hard to win this position as the position is closed, which means there are many pawns on the board. And bishops do well in open positions. From a practical standpoint, this is hard to win. Magnus said, no thanks, let me go to b1 to attack this weak pawn. You might be thinking, why did Magnus give up the d file? Well, that's because it's hard for black to penetrate into the d file. Let's say rook d3, I take your pawn, I'm attacking your knight. Not a good position for black. Black was forced to defend the pawn, and now the rook is very inactive. Here Magnus played knight g2, as his plan was to put the knight on d5. He's not hurrying, he's just following his plan to take control of the weak square. After knight f6, Magnus moved his king towards the center so that it can potentially help out in the future. After knight e8, planning to play knight e6 in order to attack the c4 pawn, which is hard to defend, Magnus played bishop f2. But how do you defend this pawn? It's hard to defend. If the king goes here, it's vulnerable to attacks along the open d file. Well, Magnus had a plan. After knight e6, knight to e3 was played, defending the pawn. Now, Wesley So was forced to move back to d7 because there's just nothing he can do here. He was preparing f5 in order to break apart the position. Now Magnus played knight to d5. He's not worrying that a trade of pieces can happen. Why? A trade of pieces did happen in the game. But guess what? White has a passed pawn, and White's king is more active, which brings us to the sixth rule, which is activate your king in the endgame. It's best if the king stays in the center so that it can help on all sides. If the king if you activate the king on the a3 square or the h4 square, it doesn't make any sense because it isn't doing anything there. But if it's on the d3 square, let's say, it's actually defending the pawns here. Very useful tip, by the way. Now black played rook to b7. If black would have played a random move, bishop takes c5, and the pawn can't be captured because of the hanging rook. Black had to defend the rook, and now the king climbs up. King to d3, protecting all of these pawns. After f5, black tried to fight back. Magnus won't worry. He played pawn to c4, solidifying the position here. But what's his plan? Let's take a moment to assess the position to see who's better. Compare the rooks. White's rook is clearly more active. These two pieces you can say are equally active. White's king is more active, but this is a weak, isolated pawn, which means it cannot be defended by any other black pawns. And it will be easy for White's bishop to attack that pawn. Here, black played rook to f7, desperate to fight back. Let's see what happens if black plays something else like knight c8. Well, then white will simply capture. Black was forced to go here, and here Magnus used checks captures attacks to find rook b6. because now he is attacking the knight also. Black took and white took. This position is winning for white due to this passed d pawn. Let's see how Magnus converted. Rook f3. He moved his king back to e2. If the rook tries to take, rook to e6 will be played, and there's no stopping this pawn. Black played rook c3, and after rook to e3, e6, attacking this pawn, black was worried and desperately took the pawn. But then even white took the pawn, and now there are two passed connected pawns. After black took the pawn, rook to e7 was played. Then Magnus defended the rook, and after rook to d4 and pawn to e5, black resigned. Wait a second. Black resigned after pawn to d6 itself because it's impossible to stop these two pawns. If rook d4 is played to stop the pawn, white will push the pawn forward. King f5, no problem. Pawn to d7, then the pawn will go to the e6 square, after which the rook will just move to e8 and promote with the support of this pawn. These were just some of the calculation tips that Magnus uses. If you want more tips, please let me know. Even I'm trying to improve at chess, and making these videos not only helps other players but also helps me because I want to get my rating to 2300 rapid by the end of the year. Let me know if you are interested in any specific videos. Thanks for watching. Train to win. Bye.